BuildingTheFantasy.com. I am Jason Saltzman. Today we are going to go over Redraft, Keeper, or Dynasty. Which league is right for you? What is the difference in the league? So let's get right to it. The Redraft League. A Redraft League, start with the definition. A Redraft League is where your team's roster starts new each season. Everyone's roster starts new. Owners pick from the entire league's roster of players each fantasy season. So there is no commitment to your players or really to the other guys in the league because you're starting over every year. Every year is a new game. Keeper. A keeper league is similar to a dynasty league, which we'll go over next, but it involves keeping a smaller portion of your players. Basically, a keeper league allows you to keep a few players or for a few players to be retained. So at this point, you're going to keep a percentage of your roster, of your team, maybe one player, maybe 7 players. It depends on the league and how it's orchestrated and set up. But so that is your keeper league. A dynasty league is a league where you retain most or all your players from year to year. This creates an environment which is very different from that of a redraft league. You are going to be keeping a large portion of that roster that it's called a startup draft in Dynasty, and you will be keeping almost all that roster unless you find ways to trade. And the only way really to get new talent is through a rookie draft or through a free agent draft, which doesn't have a ton of players because large majority of the rosters are being kept. So let's fast forward. Let's go to start with redraft. So starting the bottom left-hand corner, it's a new draft every season. I'd say this is my number, 75% of seasonal fantasy players play this style league. So daily fantasy is a new thing, but actually joining a league, I'd say the large majority of players, for a number of reasons, play a redraft league. First off, it's more casual. So either you're a beginner to fantasy, or you've played fantasy for a while and have your group of friends, or maybe you've played 10, 20 years, but you don't have the time for a keeper dynasty, or you just don't want to put that effort, or you like the redraft style. You're going to be playing a redraft league. So it's for family, friends, coworkers. Maybe you have a group online that you know that you want to play a league with. It's the quickest draft. It's about an hour. Level commitment, which we're going to get into this scale at the end of the video, is between a 1 and 3. So least amount of rules in a redraft. A lot of times it's just you get online, you do your draft, the commission sets up the rules that are pre-given out before the draft, and then that's what you go by, and there's very little that needs to be done. Not always, but the most part. Least amount of extras. There's no commitment to or by owners to anything later. So it's a new game every year. So if you play year 1 and year 2, if you don't want to play, no problem. And it's very easy to get another owner because they are taking over a brand new team with a brand new game. Everything starts over. So there's no commitment also to any of the players drafted, which is different in Keeper and Dynasty. It's fun, simple, intense during the regular season. In strategy season, of course, there's strategy, in-season strategy, but there's no future to worry about. So all the moves you make are based on win the championship this year, and then everything resets. It's also the easiest league to find. So for a number of reasons, the draft's the quickest. There's the least amount of rules. It takes the lead. There's no off season. It's the easiest league to find. It's a new game every year. I think that's why it tends to get the most people. It's the easiest to administer. There's not a ton of back work or history to be kept. Keeper league. So a keeper league is the next step where you're going to be keeping some of your players, maybe 1, maybe 5. Generally 25, 30% of your roster. Anything more than that, you're getting into a gray area, not quite a dynasty league, not really a keeper league. So a new draft every season minus the players kept. So if there's for hypothetical, let's do a hypothetical. There's a 10-man fantasy baseball league. Each team on average kept 3 players. They can keep none, they can keep 7, however the league works, but each average they kept 3. So 30 players are now being kept. Sometimes there's a penalty equated to keep it attached to keeping a player, such as losing a number pick in the draft, or it costs money out of your auction budget to keep this player. Anyhow, there's 30 players that now will not be in that draft, and then you do a draft as if it was a redraft league. It just all the other players are still there, and whether you do a snake or auction, and that would be for another video getting into what the different draft types and how you can hold your draft. But for now, a keeper league is going to have a majority of the players back, so it's not as much of a commitment because you can still make your team better each draft. Where a dynasty, where we get into next, almost all the rosters kept. So there is, in the offseason, there's no big draft that comes around every year. There is. It's a lot different. It's a rookie and free agent draft, but it's a lot different than a redraft or a keeper draft where the majority of the player pool is back in the draft every year. So again, you're looking for a little more in a keeper league, a little more than just your redraft league. You want a little more strategy. It's casual to nerdy. Friends, sports groups, sports junkie, fantasy nerds, people that have played maybe a redraft league 4 or 5 years, they're ready for the step up. Maybe your league has had a redraft and you're ready to take it up a notch. The draft every year, because there is more that goes into it. You got to know who's been kept. You got to have a different strategy. I'd say the drafts range from 2 to 4 hours, depending how you hold them. I'm all for making draft day a big thing and not rushing the draft. Level commitment, which we'll get into again, that scale 4 to 7. There's more rules, but manageable. Your commission owner needs to be a little more active. You see there that talked about the players being kept. Both the commission owners should plan for a long-term commitment to the league. There's a slight commitment to your players drafted because you're going to then keep a portion of them for another season. So it's another 6-month, 12-month contract or lease or rental agreement with these certain players you're keeping. It's kind of like a roommate situation where you're choosing which ones you're going to keep for that next year, and then it's up to you whether you want to stay into this contract or we're going to reset. So there's a little bit of a difference with the keeper strategy, a minor off season. Keeper is a lot of fun. Then you move over to the dynasty, which is the next level up. And to stick with that analogy, we'll start here in the purple. So both the commission, the owners plan on a long-term commitment to the league. This is for a few reasons. When you start up a dynasty league, let's say you draft a 40-man football roster and you keep in the rules 35 of those players at the end of the year. Well, there's no turnover at the end of this in the off season because all the players are being kept. So now you only have a chance. It's a long-term commitment to your players. And so in the keeper, this is not my analogy, I found this, but in the keeper league, where it's more of a roommate situation with your players you're drafting, here it's like a marriage, because when you draft that rookie in the rookie offseason, he's yours for the career, the span, unless you trade him or release him. For a decade, that player is yours. In the startup draft, when you draft a player, it's a long-term commitment. So I really like that analogy. It makes sense. So let's go back to the bottom left where we started every other time. It's nerdy to intense. Startup draft, which is a long one, 2 to 5 hours depending. A rookie draft every offseason, and another separate free agent draft every offseason. Sometimes those are combined into one. Off-season drafts vary. Sometimes you do them on an app, and it can spread over a period of time. Just depending how you want to do it, could take an hour or two. Level commitment 8 to 10. We'll get into that just next. There's the most rules. You do need good leadership. It's so worth it if you have a good league like this with good owners, highly active commission owners. You're generally keeping 60% to 100% of the roster from year to year. So let's jump over to the level of commitment that each one of these takes, really, so we're all aware and what I meant by it. So a redraft league, level of commitment scale 1 to 3. They make the draft, or at least they set their auto pick if they can't make the draft. But it helps the league when the owners make the draft. They're paying attention to the free agency. They're a part of trade talks. Not everybody likes to trade, but it helps. Big one, they set their lineup every week. If not, you really struck out there. But if they can hit all 3 of those, and that's all you want to do, you're great for a redraft league. And if you want to start a redraft league as a commissioner and you know people like this and this is your target audience, bam, you hit all 3 of those, you have a great redraft league. A lot of fun. If you can add maybe a 4 communication on there to up the redraft even more exciting, and just add to it, that adds, because it is more fun when you have a level of communication versus a league where you're just setting a lineup and there's no talking. not as much incentive, but not everyone's into that, and it doesn't make them a bad fantasy player whatsoever. So keeper league, a level 4 to 7. So it's the same 3. However, there is the minor offseason, and they need to be aware of who's being kept, who wasn't kept, what's my best strategy on who to keep, what's the rules, how does it all work. There is that future commitment to those players, because whoever you keep, let's say now you quit and Tim now is coming in over to take the team. Well, they're going to only choose from the keepers or your roster who they can keep. So it only messes it up for a year, where a dynasty it messes up for a lot longer. It's hard. You draft a team that's terrible, you quit. Now it's tougher to get you have to convince a new owner to rebuild, which if you have a good league, it's easier to convince. And there'll be videos, a video you can check out on recruitment and how to go about that the right way to retain or recruit owners. Let's get back to this. So keeper league, minor offseason, a future commitment. They communicate. It's more fun. It adds to it. The more people you have communicating in any league, it definitely makes it more immersive. Keeper strategy, and there's just a little more rules, but it's worth it. Finally, dynasty side is an 8 to 10. Again, makes the draft. Now, there's more drafts in the offseason, so it's a little higher, but we get a little more level effort, but that'll come. For free agency and trades, they set their lineup on time, and there's the future commitment. I hope I've stressed it enough that it's a big future commitment in a dynasty, keeper, and redraft, but really that dynasty, because it's such a long-term commitment. A league is only as good as its owners, and you're going to hear me say that in almost every video, and it's really the truth. If you have solid owners, if you got a solid team, if you got solid people doing it, just things run themselves, and the commission is there just to make it better or communicate or have fun or make the owners feel incentivized. So again, dynasty, future commitment, they communicate. There's the major off season. There's a dynasty strategy, not keeper, but dynasty. It's even deeper and more fun and more like you're really a GM. It's awesome. There's the most rules. There's a huge commitment to your players and really to the owners that you start this thing in with or join with. And you got to be able to ride through the good and bad. So if you make a poor trade, it could affect you 2 years. If you have a bad startup season, it could affect you 3 seasons. But you make a good trade and you could be on really riding high for a couple years. So you got to be able to ride through the good and bad. You got to know that's coming in a dynasty league. The redraft, 0 commitment to players' future. The keeper, some commitment to the player's future, like a roommate. And then the dynasty is a huge commitment to the roster and long-term future, more like a marriage. Excuse me. I will go into each one of these in sports-specific. So if you want to go over to sports specific, there are going to be videos on redraft baseball leagues or different ways to do keeper baseball leagues or dynasty football leagues or NBA. And then there will also be specific league builds that get into different dynasty leagues and how to set them up and what's tailor-made for you. And I'm just going to walk you through it. Going to create something real nice and clean for a constitution. Going to direct you to the right site, the right host. So again, I've done a lot of the work. I've done really all the work, and I've just put it together for you because it's what I've been searching for, and I don't understand why it's missing. So what to do next for yourself. Go over to the owners who and how video. Again, the league is only as good as its owners. So check out who and how on the owners video. Got a little taste of it in this one. The draft type video, snake auction in that video, and it's also going to go over the online, offline options and what I think is the best way to go about it. Finally, the other league basic videos such as host sites, payouts, these are non-sport specific, and that's why they're in league basics. If you got that all, I suggest those videos because they're just, if nothing else, going to get the juices flowing. Jump straight to the sport specific or the league builds if you're ready for that, or go at least get excited about that and come back to some of the other videos. But I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got something out of this. Put a lot of research. It's all one place here for you. You check it out, buildingthefantasy.com. It's all there with research, articles, podcasts, videos, the YouTube video. Like, subscribe to make sure you're getting all this and enjoy. Check out the podcast, buildingthefantasy.com. I am Jason Saltzman.
Hi guys, Real Life Peter Griffin here. You know what really grinds my gears? A poor constructed fantasy league. Continue to tune in and thanks for watching buildingthefantasy.com.